Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Naked Shrimp Dumplings in Dashi. That's right, we're making dumplings without wrappers, which is why I'm calling these naked dumplings. And also, if I'm being honest, I thought the slightly provocative name would work well as a possible appetizer for your Valentine's Day menu. And I know a lot of people like to take out their special someone to a restaurant, but it's been my experience that if you stay home and cook something from scratch, you significantly increase your chances of getting lots of compliments. So with that, let's go ahead and get started by making some dashi, which is going to start with a type of seaweed called kombu. And it really does look and feel like pieces of dusty green plastic. And what we'll do is go ahead and place that in a saucepan and pour over some nice cold fresh water. And then what we'll do is give that a little mix with our hand. Although I'm pretty sure you don't need to. But what you definitely do need to do is let the seaweed soak in that water for at least 30 minutes. And some people do go longer, but I would say that's the minimum. And while we're waiting for that, we can go ahead and talk about the only other ingredient in dashi, and that would be these bonito flakes, also known as katsubushi. And if I told you what this was, you wouldn't believe me. But I'm going to anyway. It's actually a type of tuna that they boil and then smoke and dry until it's as hard as wood, at which point it's shaved very thinly, which is what you're seeing here. And then what we'll do once our seaweed has soaked for 30 minutes is place that over medium-high heat, at which point we'll bring this up to almost, but not quite a simmer. And be sure to have a bowl and something to fish it out with nearby, because once this comes up to temp, we need to remove it from the pan immediately. Okay, so don't go anywhere. And when you see some tiny bubbles forming on the bottom of the pan, we're going to really start paying close attention. And while we're waiting, it's probably not a bad idea to give it a stir. And then once this looks like it's just about to start to simmer, like just barely, like a few small bubbles start to rise up to the surface. Okay, right when we get to that just about to start to simmer stage, we will immediately remove our seaweed from the water and turn off our heat. And by the way, if you turned off the video because you didn't think you could find these ingredients, turn it back on, because you can find the seaweed and the bonito flakes in most of your large supermarkets these days, and definitely online. And of course, any water that accumulates in that bowl, go ahead and pour back into the pan. Yes, those count as accumulated juices. And that's it, our kombu step is done. So let me go ahead and grab a ladle, so that I can not only show you that little bit of color that the seaweed imparted, but also so we can cool this down a little bit before we add our bonito flakes. And what we'll do is just ladle some up and pour it back in, which as you can see releases a lot of steam, which means we're releasing a lot of heat. Okay, because the word on the street is, we don't want to add our bonito flakes while this is still boiling hot. So we'll want to cool this down till it's about 150 or so, which is still pretty hot, but not close to boiling. And then once that has cooled down a little, we'll go ahead and carefully transfer in our bonito flakes. And we'll go ahead and stir that in, and then turn our heat back on to medium-high. And we'll wait for this to return to a gentle simmer. And then once this does come back to a gentle simmer, we will set our timer for 5 minutes. And that is it for this entire operation. Okay, after our bonito flakes has simmered for 5 minutes, we will pull this off the heat, and we'll carefully pass it through a strainer. And believe it or not, that's it. We just made dashi. And while you certainly can enjoy it just like this, what you're seeing here is basically like a base broth, with which hundreds of other things are made. Actually, it's probably closer to 1,000. And at this point, you really can go ahead and flavor this any way you want. I mean, you are, after all, the Kobayashi of your dashi. And some of the usual suspects added to this would include soy sauce, mirin, rice vinegar, ginger, and miso. So what you're seeing here is generally just a starting point. And if everything goes according to plan, you should end up with about 5 cups or so, which we can use right away, or put it away until we need it. And since we are going to flavor this later, I do recommend you taste it as is, so you understand what's going on, and also to blow your mind. Because this stuff is incredible, which I would describe as a subtly salty, severely savory sip of the ocean, if the ocean had been very, very lightly smoked. Okay, so our dashi's done, and we can move on to these super simple dumplings, which other than a few flavorings only have 2 ingredients. And those would be some raw, peeled and deveined shrimp, and then, believe it or not, some burrata cheese, which is basically an extra decadent version of mozzarella. In fact, the outside skin is exactly like regular mozzarella, but inside it is very moist and creamy. And this is a 9-ounce piece, and we only need 8 ounces. So I'm going to eat 1 ounce. Thank you, math. And what we'll do is transfer our shrimp and our burrata into this food processor. And then to that we will add some salt, as well as a little bit of paprika, mostly to give our dumplings a little shrimpier color. We will also do a few shakes of cayenne, just to stay in shape. And then we'll finish up with a little bit of freshly grated ginger, and just a little touch of sesame oil. And that's it. We'll go ahead and process this, starting by pulsing on and off. And then we'll just go ahead and let it run until we have a very, very smooth paste. And of course, it's not a bad idea to stop about halfway through and scrape the sides with a spatula to make sure everything's mixing evenly. And when it's done, it should look something like this, which you're going to be able to see a lot better as I transfer it into a bowl. And that is it for our naked shrimp dumpling mixture, which we could use right away if we're starving, but I do recommend wrapping it and popping it in the fridge until it's chilled thoroughly. Like an hour or two at least. And that's it. Once I was ready to serve, I added 1 cup of our dashi to 3 cups of cold fresh water, along with a giant pinch of salt. And what we'll do is bring this up to a simmer on medium-high and use this to poach our dumplings. So we'll go ahead and bring that up to a gentle simmer, at which point we can pull out our shrimp mixture. And we're going to form our naked dumplings by using 2 spoons. Okay, all we're going to do is grab about 1.5 tablespoons, and then by transferring it spoon to spoon like you see me doing here, we're going to end up with a fairly uniform oval shape. And that's it. One shape, we'll go ahead and drop that into our simmering cooking liquid, where we will cook it for just about 2 minutes. And yes, of course you can do more than one, but it's always good to do a test with one in case you want to adjust your seasonings. And as legend has it, when a naked shrimp dumpling is done, it will actually turn over in the water. Check it out. And that's it. We'll go ahead and remove that to a plate and go in for a little test taste. And why I use the burrata here is because it gives me the fat and richness I want, but it doesn't taste like cheese. And what these end up tasting like is shrimp, in a very light, sort of puffy, tender and delicious form. Okay, so that passed the test, which means we can prep our dashi for the actual service. And for me, all that means is heating up a couple cups of our pure undiluted dashi broth we made. And I'm going to flavor that very simply with just a little bit of soy sauce and a little bit of mirin, which is a sort of sweet Japanese rice cooking wine. And all we're going to need to do here is bring this up to a simmer on medium-high heat. And other than making sure we give it a taste, that is now ready to serve our dumplings in. And yes, in case you're wondering, you can cook the dumplings right in that. And I probably should have, and the written recipe will probably say to do that. But I wasn't sure if poaching the dumplings was going to make the dashi cloudy. So I played it safe, so you don't have to. But anyway, we'll go ahead and ladle some of that into a warm bowl. And then I went ahead and poached 3 more dumplings, which I did not take my time and form as nicely as the first one. But that's okay. Once these are cooked and puffed up, they all kind of look the same. And remember, the look we're going for would be the inside of a dumpling if we took off the wrapper. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And we'll go ahead and place those in our dashi, ideally where that comes halfway up the dumpling. And at first I arranged them like this, but then I decided I did not want an arrangement. I wanted a set. So I repositioned and felt a lot better. And I garnished with a few sliced green onions, as well as a few thin slices of Fresno chili. And then last but not least, a little bit of toasted sesame seed. And that's it. What we're calling naked shrimp dumplings and dashi is done. Or is it our done? But either way, let me go ahead and grab a spoon and go in for a taste. And that, my friends, is just an extraordinarily delicious spoon of food. Okay, we have that beautifully light, tender, airy dumpling, which really is a fantastic thing all by itself. But when you're eating it with spoonfuls of this incredibly savory dashi broth, accented with that little extra salty kiss of soy, and that little hint of sweetness from the mirin, it's just a profoundly delicious thing to eat. And there really are so many beautiful ways you could serve these components. And I probably should have went with one of those. But even presented as simply as this, we're talking about something that should, and probably will, very much impress whoever you're making this for. Whether it's a friend or a lover, or both. And even if you're not going to make the dumplings, definitely make the dashi, since you can enjoy that with so many different things, like eggs or fried tofu or ramen noodles, just to name a few. But officially, I really do hope you try the dashi and these naked shrimp dumplings very soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.